So in this tutorial, we have to take a look at our characters from our storyboards that we have just completed and find out how we need to modify them for the specific needs of our storyboard. So this is what was really important, that we understood our characters when we went into storyboard, and that we drew as on model as we can, both your character and the Hawk character. And what we need to do now is really take a look at our panels and figure out what it is our character is doing, and what do we have to design to modify the character to be able to do the action. Because our generic designs were the character just standing there. So now we've got to modify and work on what specific actions they have to do. So I'm going to go through my storyboard that I've done as an example and kind of break down what is our requirements for both characters. So here we are, my panel 1. I have my character that I had already designed, but now he's in a very specific pose that I didn't design in my original concept. And here, I'm just going to go over with the tissue here. Here I have this arm. I have an action too, and this is what's important about posing out your action in the storyboard, so that, yeah, it's going to make life much easier when I go to construct, build this character and rig it, that I know exactly what the plan is. So, the battle is well underway. So these two arms, or that hand on the cheek and this one holding this little stamp here, is really important. I have to design those into my base character. And as you can see in this action here, he's stamping, and he repeats that a few times in my story. And then there's back to that same position. I've just cut further out so I can see more of the environment. So I've got to work on how am I going to pull that off, where the hinges are going to be, how am I going to make that action from up to down, how is that going to work? So a lot of challenges here. So if you thought that through at all in your storyboard stage, it's going to make life a little easier. So there's one that I've identified. Here with the Hawk character, I have not designed feet coming from the back, looking at the soles of the feet as he comes in. So this is definitely a specialty design that I have to figure out and understand to be able to do this scene. So I'm going to highlight, and again, I gave this some thought when I storyboarded it, that I know this is something that's going to be specifically designed that I got to sort out. And then this is the next panel, that here's what we have. We know this one, this is that 3/4 back view, so we're making use of that. But because he flew into the scene and landed, I had to make these feet special. So this is another thing that we're going to have to tackle. Other frames here, all looks good. Might be able to get away with this hand, not sure, but we may have to specialize just that hand for when he hands the character behind the booth that he needs a new license renewal, as we see here. Okay, so we're making a list of what we need to modify. The character here, we have expressions. We're going to be tackling those next week with mouth charts, and working on the flexibility of your character's face to be able to get various expressions. So here I've got a very worried look, or sad, just bored sort of look, and now he's got to show some excitement that he needs a new photo for his driver's license, so that's his big thing. So I do have to consider this arm, this hand, and how he's going to be holding on to that piece of paper. So the biggie's coming up here. He goes behind the counter, and that was worked out cinematically so that I had a chance to be able to change out his hands here. One of the things you'll notice, and this is a typical kind of cheat that we can do in animation, is we've cut close to the character and such, and now I just have his hand on the counter, and I got rid of the stamp. Now I could add that as an overlay into my environment here have that stamp on the counter. So, and even the other papers have disappeared here. So continuity. Sometimes you get away with it. If you cut away, they just magically disappear at your convenience. But I could still leave paper and the stamp on the side here. Because we've cut away to look at all this other action, well, you can assume things have changed in the scene, so you don't have to worry about those details. But that's up to you. And, you know, how much work you want to put into adding those details and such. But here's the biggie for me. And that's where he comes up out of behind the counter. And the reason I had him go behind the counter was that I had time that I could even finish the scene of him, not finish it, but stop that scene and then replace the arms and then with a new file start animating again, but with these new limbs and accessories all attached to the character to finish out that action. So anyway, so this is a biggie. Look at here, I've got this old-fashioned flash on a stick, and the way his arm is going to be holding on to that. I also have this old bellows camera, and how is he going to hold that, and where the arm attaches, and lots of things to figure out. So this is a biggie in design. I got to figure out how I'm going to, what do I have to design now, and how am I going to rig the character for those aspects. Hot character, this all seems pretty generic, although I'm sure I don't have hands in this position. So I'm only got one panel in this scene, but I know I'll have to do up these hands for the hawk, because I don't think I have in our generic design this aspect. So that's more work. We've got to take that generic design and work that out and add those new hands and design them and then scale them so that it'll can add into our construction. And the same for his facial expressions and things. I think I have everything there. There's a number of mouth shapes. We're going to get into that in the next week or two. Material ID mouth for the hawk, so you will understand the needs there. But I do have a number of the mouths to be able to do lip sync. But if you need anything additional, we've got to work on that. Okay, so we got more of the camera and the lights. So that is, carried over from where he jumped up, but we've come in close. So we've got to work on those so that we can actually build those items. Okay, so next page. So we're making a list. We'll see if these hands, if they need to be thought of. We've got these swirls in the eyes, so they're additional. I'll have to think about designing those. This hand needs to be reconstructed because I do not have a pointing finger in this sort of, and again, I'm not sure how awkward this design is that I have in the storyboard. But now we've really got to figure out, well, how am I going to do it? So that's what we're looking at now. How are we going to get the action, and how are we going to build that and add it to our design of the hawk and our character. Other things here, same ideas. I'll have a modification that these flash bulbs are a one-time go in these old cameras, so I have them kind of looking like they're burnt out, so that's an additional I'll have to add for these particular scenes. And you can see the expression. I got to make sure that when we get to the mouth chart that also have expressions and mouth shapes that will work for that character. Okay, so there we go. So far so good. 3/4 back view. So again, I'm trying to keep it simple by keeping just those 3/4 views. Really important to make sure that we're limiting the amount of work we have to do, but really making sure these work. So yeah, looking at the feet on this character. I think this one's pretty generic to my 3/4 back view, but this one's in a different position. This might need a redo to get this designed and then constructed and rigged to be able to make that work. And on here we got a back view. Here's that hand holding on the camera. Here is this hand holding to these lights. So that has to be reworked from my generic design, all specific to this storyboard. Okay. So here, we cut away. Here's some cinematics going on here. We have the Hawk holding this city school business card, which we have a close-up of. And one of the reasons of cutting to the close-up is one, referencing to what the character is holding and what he's talking about. So that's always a good cinematic thing. But also give us an opportunity that the lights here are gone. Well, he could have put it down in the meantime. Well, we cut to that. We could come back and he's put that down. And now this sets up that he flies out of the scene, leaving the card flying, drifting in the air, and he's going to have to grab that card and then take a look at it. And that's our sequence, our 30-second film. So I got to make sure this hand will work to be able to pick up this card and hold it, so that we've got that action is functional. And also, here we go, we've got the Hawk, he flies out of the scene. So again, there was the feet that I had pointing as he comes down. Now I got to make sure that feet can point down as he flies up out of the scene. Now, something I haven't really worked out here, or didn't really draw it through, was when he takes off. How is he going to fly out? Is he just like jumping up in the air? And this is where a good point, even when we go to work on our design, is you may want to fill in some holes in your storyboard. Because from here to here, I haven't really thought it through. You really start to notice these things when you go to an animatic. So what I did now was I added a frame showing that the wings pop out. He anticipates jumping and taking off, flying again. So I am going to use the wings on mine, and we'll be able to see them here in this shot. And again, I have that pose that I want to make sure that the character can get into that pose so they can do that action. Okay, so there we go. So that's where we really got to go through our storyboard, and the importance of really making sure that storyboard is very clear and on model so we can work it out. So what I've done here is, let me zoom out. I've taken those key scenes and put them on another piece of paper. Again, I took advantage of a photocopier I could have done this in a printer too, and blown up these images so that I can really work on the design. So it was, well, let's take a look at this one first. Here's a major pose, and here's that action that I've got. So what I want to do is go over my my real nailed down design, which I've had originally, which is here. Here's my cleaned up one that we've done in a previous video. And now I got it, and you can see those generic arms, hands, how I've got it set up. So now I've got to make it work for this particular scene. So I'm trying to scale and work out how those hands and arms work and make that really happen. So what we have to do in our design now is rough these out to our, master design of our character. And then we've got to isolate and figure out just how and detail how those are going to work. And then I got to break that down and figure out, do I need joints? Like, how are these pieces coming together? And this one, so this, I can have this arm piece come in here. Nothing here moves, so if I can work out how that hand and fingers are holding on to this big camera, there's not a whole lot of action going on with that. That's all one piece. But this is that arm connecting up to the body. So I've got a pivot here, and I've got a pivot behind the camera. So I've got some movement. I can have them drop that camera and make that work. Okay? So, and then from there, it's cleaning all this up. So going over and doing a very clean, just like we cleaned up our character here, doing that to each of the modifications and pieces so that we got something really nailed down, defined, and working well for our construction. that we bring that and put it on a flat in 3ds Max, and we trace it over with our line tool, and we can create all of these elements. Okay, so there's an example of that one. I have this one here, so working this up and really trying to really figure out the design of these new arms to make this work. So this is my roughing and working it up. It's taking that master design and trying to keep scale to the arms and the size relationship. I actually kind of made the hands a little bigger to feature them a little more, so I've gone a little off scale on continuity of my own character here. So that's something that we want to keep as close as we can, but we can emphasize principle of animation, exaggeration, so we're featuring what's important in the scene. So I'm working that out, and I'm trying to figure out the action, the motion that's happening in that scene and how it's going to work. So I've defined that a little bit more here by cleaning that up, even breaking down into elements as to where hinges and things are, how it's going to function, and the pieces and how I'm going to piece it all together, and I'm trying to work out how I'm going to make it actually happen. So, I've cleaned that up here. So, we've taken a look at that, really taking your time, really making sure that we're making everything in the design count and that it's looking exactly like we want it to. And again, talking about proportions and detail, which is, again, everything we've been talking about in design, and making sure every line is representing what it's supposed to be and is really functioning for us. But again, this is the whole piece. But if I've got to make this move, I got to break it down into the pieces, like here. And it's even this breaking down into pieces that we can really clean up, so that whatever you're going to be tracing from, to use the line tool to make this work. So here we are. I'm just going over this. And we know these have to be the same circle, how we're going to construct these bits. This is going to be a lot of extra pieces as we're working on the face of even Stretch, that we had to add some extra pieces. We got the outline, but then we had to add those pieces to get the detail inside. And you can see on this one, the stamp I made really two-dimensional, and that's because of the action. Because he holds it up and then brings it way down, I can't have perspective. I can't show the bottom and then the top because it's 2D, and I really wanted to avoid having to do a lot of extra swapping in and out of hands and things during the action. So I tried to work this out so it all works in one go. And it repeats, so I got to make sure that it works. So I got to figure out with this pivot, how am I going to end this pivot? And even the position of the hand on that arm, how am I going to have that swing down? Is it going to swing this way? Is it going to swing that way? Lots of decisions to make. So the more you thought this through in your storyboard, the easier it is these next steps of pulling it off and working on the bits that we need to work out to get this action to happen. Okay, so that's our challenge. Once we've cleaned up and did a really good 3/4 front, 3/4 back, particularly in your film. And if you've decided you needed more views than these, you got to design them, you got to clean them up, and be ready to trace and rig and work them out. Same with our hot character. I've got 3/4 front. This is strictly for a size comparison, but I am using the 3/4 back, so I had to clean that all up. And, well, you've got that already. But any modifications, you can see with the hands. In my storyboard, I have different hand action going on, so I've got to draw new hands for those specific scenes to make that work. And feet. I had very specific feet at the beginning. And I'm not sure in the end, and we'll see later on, if I needed to make new feet on the takeoff. I think I made use of these and just bent them down to make that work. But all this you have to consider and start planning now, designing and working out. So this, quite often the fun part is, this is the clever time of how you're going to, this is creative thinking. What are the solutions to be able to get your characters to do what you want them to tell your story? And at this stage, sometimes you'll find that you may have come across a brick wall going, I don't know if I can get them to do that. I've kind of maybe overdone it, or I've done something that's going to be near impossible to do in 2D. This is when you might have to go back to your storyboard and rework, tweak, and figure out, okay, how am I going to make this action work? And then actually sort it out and find, how you're going to break that down and make your character do it. Okay? So I'll sign off for that one. Have fun sorting this out. It's a great challenge. Critical thinking. Now you got to make this work. All right? See you later.